When you say the regime, who are you referencing when you talk about the regime?
Well, basically, it's Nicolas Maduro who is the dictator, but he's not like alone in power. There is a whole group of people that surrounds him. For example, his wife, Celia Flores, is someone who has a lot of power in Venezuela. You have the second most powerful guy in the government structure, who is Diosdado Cabello. He's also someone who has a lot of power. I would say that probably the regime, as I call it, it's a reunion of different factions of different groups that have like the same common goal. Sometimes there are some inside fights that allegedly that they happen, but yeah, it's not like a single guy who controls every single thing. It's a small group in Caracas that has a lot of power, and they take all of the bad decisions that we're seeing in Venezuela. Maduro is like the main face, but there are some other surrounding him that also have a lot of power.
You mentioned the same goal. What's the goal? What is the underlying goal that they're even trying to do that's destroying this country?
Just remain in power forever, be as rich as they can by, stealing money from us and doing corrupt businesses and doing money laundering and producing drugs in Venezuela. That's their whole objective. That's social control and remain in power for as long as they can.
And not go to prison. Let's remember that staying in power means you don't go to prison. And if they were in power, every single one of the members of the regime, not only because of the actions they have made inside the system, but let's remember that there is a whole drug cartel run by this regime, by the military in Venezuela. So these are a bunch of criminals. If they were not in power, they will be in prison right now. So remaining in power and doing everything they can to keep it is also a way to not be in prison, because that's where they go when they lose power.
What are some of the consequences that someone in Venezuela would suffer or face if they speak against them, if they protest, something like what you guys would be doing in activism?
Well, there are many. Jorge can expand on that too. But, the first one is that and speaking out, let's define speaking. Speaking out can be saying something in your class in college, can be saying something in social media, can be even saying something to a neighbor, and it turns out that neighbor works for the government, and now they know what you said. So it can be many, many things. And the thing is, like, once you do something, you start feeling that you're being watched. Not only watch where you live, but where you work and what you do on social media, what you don't do on social media. You start fearing for yourself. You start fearing from your family. That's why many, many activists, Jorge and many others, and me included, leave the country, because that's one way that not only they don't target you, but they don't target your family too. So it's like a tribute. I leave the country, you guys don't touch my family. But the consequences when they actually get to you is what we have seen with the political prisoners in Venezuela. There are many, many horrible cases, for example, of people having the genitalia electrocuted, having, for example, members of the military that spoke out. There is this famous Navy guy that he got hanged by his ankles into one room until he, started losing conscious. They show him videos of his dog being mutilated so they can break his mind. And that happens to not only military defectors, but it happens to high school students, happens to college students, happens to everyday business owners. It happens to anyone that either says something really bad that the regime doesn't want you to say, or you get in trouble with a specific member of the regime. Can be anyone. It can be the low military member in your corner, but it turns out that you're getting a problem with him, and he's going to call his buddies inside the regime, and they're going to take you to somewhere and torture you. And to the point that if you see the testimonies of the people that had either been blessed to leave the prison in Venezuela, is that they wish they just die. It's a point where you would rather die than to keep being under the torture that they put you.
Jorge, you have anything to expand on that?
No, I think Andres explained it very clearly. The consequences could be from, maybe receiving a monetary fine, or maybe something really bad like going to prison, or even just being shot dead and being killed because of your political opinions. That's We were just in February the 12th. We were commemorating in year number 10 from some massive protests that took place in Venezuela in the year 2014. In these protests, more than 100 students died because of their political expression and because of their political activism. They were in the streets peacefully protesting, and they were executed in the middle of the street by criminals supporting the Maduro regime. So yeah, it's really, really dangerous to be politically involved and politically active in a place like Venezuela.
And Vincent, if I can add a little bit more, if we all saw the news of what happened in Chile last week, a military from Venezuela that was exiled in Chile for many years ago, he got kidnapped by members of the intelligence unit from Venezuela in Chile. First, people thought that they just do it rogue, but it seems like there are more information coming that the Chilean government allowed these intelligence units to operate in Chile. And that's just not an isolated case. Let's remember, the criminal enterprise that the regime of Venezuela is an international criminal enterprise. The reach that they have goes all the way in Latin America. And what we don't want, for example, is that happens here. We've seen many of those criminals that have started to come through the southern border. And there will be no time until they start getting orders directly from the government to take care of people that are here saying stuff that they shouldn't, I guess, the regime.
It's reminiscent of movies, of the Hunger Games. Yeah. You know what I mean? This is like insane. You see movies and you read books that are like this, and you don't think it's a reality. It's crazy because here, from my position, I watch a lot of news. I read a lot of information. I've never heard this. I saw the protests, and I thought it was pretty cool to see a country stand up and protest for what they believe in. I love seeing that. But to know that there's a case 10 years ago where 100 students were massacred in public, that blows my mind. Those are things that the rest of the world doesn't, for some reason, get the opportunity to see and hear about as much as it happens. And it's why is that, right? Why are we not know this information? And then why do we have a country where so many people fight for socialism? So many people want socialism, and is this what socialism is? I don't know. The only example I have is from what you guys are explaining to me. And it's terrifying to think of. Are you guys personally afraid for your own lives? The fact that you speak out on this and you're so public about it?
Listen, what happened like a week ago or so in Chile was a demonstration that even if we are outside Venezuela, we're not safe. This was a military member who escaped Venezuela. He was actually he used to be a political prisoner who was somehow released, and he escaped to Chile. And we don't know what he was doing in Chile, but probably he was doing some work in Chile, trying to put together some sort of movement against Maduro. I believe in that because apparently this was a really patriotic military member who was heavily opposing the dictatorship down there. And he probably believed that he was pretty safe in a country like Chile, where you have democracy, you usually have functional institutions. But then, well, we saw this kidnap executed by Maduro's intelligence in a foreign country. So that makes me think, well, is that possible to happen here in the U.S.? It's a scary thought, but it looks like it is possible. And not only that, but we are also seeing how also the Biden administration, unfortunately, they have been removing a lot of the pressure against Maduro. Maduro's nephews were in prison here in the U.S. for being involved in some narco traffic, crimes. They were paying a sentence here, and he was those guys were pardoned by Biden, and he sent them back to Venezuela. The biggest money launderer for Maduro, a guy named Alex Saab, he was also being there was a trial going on against him because of all of these money laundering activities and all of the corruption deals that he took. And he basically was also pardoned by the Biden administration, and he was sent back to Venezuela. So Biden has been really, really soft, on Maduro, and we don't know. Maybe if he actually requests someone like, hey, this guy, he's speaking too much against me. Can you do something for me? Can you deport him? Maybe, I don't know. So it's crazy because we're seeing a lot of criminals pouring in through the southern border, but people who actually resign should be being held here are being sent back, are being, we saw another military member here in the U.S. who claimed asylum. And I do believe that he had a strong claim for asylum, and he was denied and he was sent back. And at the same time, we're seeing a lot of criminals just basically walking through the southern border and doing whatever they want. So, yeah, for sure, it's a scary time to be Venezuelan and then to be part of the opposition, even if you are abroad outside the country.